Hey everybody, welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Devin Dwyer at ABC News in Washington. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday. A lot to get to today. We'll talk about a brand new poll out on the 2020 race. Who's widening their lead? Who's taking the plunge? Our political team is standing by for that. We'll also take a closer look today at that major news late yesterday involving Planned Parenthood and their involvement in a major federal program. And why are Twitter and Facebook taking action against China? All of that ahead, but we start with the politics of the day. Our political reporter Johnny Verhoeven is here, Johnny, because there's a new CNN poll out today which has some pretty interesting new numbers. We'll also have a new TV ad, the first for Joe Biden to talk about. But let's take a look at the horse race in the Democratic primary. A large field, one man on top. Look at this, Joe Biden in this new numbers here, widening his lead by 7 points.
Yeah, you see a 7-point increase for Joe Biden, who has remained at the top of most public polls if you look back through the first 3 or 4 months of the campaign since he announced. You also see a pretty significant drop there for Senator Kamala Harris of California.
And let's point out to people looking here on the screen, Harris is about 4 names down. You see she's at about 5% in the August poll. But look at that, that's down 12 points. Really the only movement in this poll, big movement, has been Kamala Harris. What's driving that?
Well, she had that big first debate where she had that big moment with Joe Biden, and many people sort of credited that for her rise in the polls following that. And you've sort of seen her kind of come back to earth. Now, this is one poll, we should say that. We should also say a lot of it comes from the fact that Joe Biden has very consistent support across a wide range of demographic groups. He has
older
voters, African-American voters, moderates, self-described moderates. So he still has sort of that coalition, and I think Kamala Harris sort of started to eat into that. But now you've seen that kind of return back to the mean that it was sort of earlier.
And he's still atop the list in this new CNN poll of the candidate who Democrats see as most likely electable. He hammers that argument home. That's a huge driver
from this poll.
And he rides that argument heavily in his first and brand new TV ad that he's running in Iowa. Let's get a taste of that.
We know in our bones this election is different. The stakes are higher, the threat more serious. We have to beat Donald Trump. And all the polls agree Joe Biden is the strongest Democrat to do the job.
Strongest Democrat to do the job, also the only Democrat who worked with Barack Obama. This is an ad where you see a lot of President Obama in there.
Yeah, those are two big takeaways that I saw from this ad, where they are really leaning into that electability argument, saying, look, you may like some other candidates, but Joe Biden is the one that can actually beat Donald Trump. And of course, you've seen Biden go back to that relationship with Obama time and time again. It's that familiarity that he has with certain Democratic voters that I think he wants to
Another contrast in this ad as well, front and center, is this issue of health care, which has animated the Democratic primary debate. He says he will build on Obamacare, not eliminate it, which is, of course, a swipe at Warren, Sanders, and Harris.
Right, and this has been a continual sticking point in the Democratic primary. You've seen, again, Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders go after each other in recent days over, high-dollar fundraisers, whether or not Kamala Harris is comfortable with Bernie's plan. Biden really has staked out that position as, I'm protecting Obamacare. That's going to be my main plan.
All right, we're headed very quickly towards the third Democratic presidential debate. It is the ABC News debate. Will be hosted in Houston just about a month from now. And also, we are 1 week from the big cutoff point, the qualification points. Let's remind everybody, Johnny, what it takes to qualify for the ABC News debate. Here are the standards. It's much tougher this time.
Right, so the DNC basically doubled the standards from the first debate to the second round of debates. You need both 2% support in 4 qualifying polls and 130,000 individual donors. You need both of them, which is a significant increase. And you've seen that kind of whittle down the field right now.
Only 10 people have qualified so far. We do have a list. We did get a new one today. Julian Castro, former housing secretary, has made the cutoff. So we have 10. We have a full stage, at least for one night in this debate. Look at that, Andrew Yang, surprising everybody, qualifying for
someone
this
who
first.
Really kind of found that support online and kind of has ridden it further than some U.S. senators, further than some governors. It's really impressive.
So this is at least one night's worth of debate here. Will we have a second night? There are a number of candidates who are on the bubble. Let's take a look at those. Tom Steyer, the newcomer to the race, is very close to meeting the threshold. Tulsi Gabbard as well. What about some of the women here? Marianne Williamson, Kirsten Gillibrand?
Right. So Marianne Williamson has met the unique donor requirement, but she still has 0 qualifying polls, so she still has an outside shot. Gillibrand is someone who's interesting. She spent a lot of money on TV ads in recent weeks. She has not met either requirements, but she's close on the donors.
So is it possible, Johnny, we have 8 days until the cutoff. Are there going to be sufficient number of polls in 8 days?
That is a fantastic question that I would love to know the answer to. You just don't know.
Right.
You just don't know which pollsters are going to come out with more polls that could, add as many as 2, maybe 3 more candidates, but we'll see.
All right, Johnny Verhoeven with our political team. We're very much looking forward to that debate. ABC News debate coming up in Houston, Texas, in the middle of September 12th. If you're keeping track, hope you have your eyes right here on ABC News Live for that. Turning now to some breaking news out of the Justice Department this afternoon. Part of an alarming trend in this country in the wake of the shooting earlier this month in El Paso, Texas, and 3 thwarted similar attacks over the weekend. Our Justice reporters Mike Levine, Alex Mallon are here, guys, because federal authorities, Alex, just announced a short time ago that they have arrested now a 35-year-old man from Maryland who was actively talking about performing the same kind of act that we saw in El Paso, targeting Hispanics.
Yeah, specifically, this man was arrested in Seattle. He'd been threatening a woman in Miami, a Spanish woman who worked at a restaurant, and allegedly sending her Facebook messages describing his hatred and hopes that he would eliminate all Hispanics that were in Miami. And he specifically cited President Trump, saying he was a big fan of President Trump. He believed that President Trump wanted to start a race war where all non-whites in the U.S. would be eliminated, and that he would send her images of Hitler, and that he believed the president would be mounting this effort to eliminate all non-whites all around the world. So really threatening communications.
How did they come on to this guy? I mean, people in the interwebs and on social media make threats all the time. They put up offensive pictures. They invoke President Trump's name. What was it about this suspect? Do we know?
So the mother of this person who was being threatened sent all these Facebook messages, reported it to the Miami Police Department, who sent it to the FBI. The FBI got a warrant from Facebook, went into his account and found out that he was communicating with another individual who he was trying to get to kidnap this woman. Said he would pay him $25,000 to specifically go and kidnap this woman and bring her to Seattle. And that's really what set off the alarm bells and allowed them to bring charges against this person.
And they found, just in terms of how deep these threats were, they found what they said were 150 pages worth of threats.
And a lot of references to Donald Trump, as you said, Alex, which puts this case, we may not have been talking about this specific case had it not been for part of the disturbing trend that you've been tracking, Mike, in this country. This case is sort of part of a trend that we are seeing a number of cases, dozens of cases in this country involving potentially violent acts that involve President Trump's rhetoric. They involve his name being invoked by the suspect.
Yeah, there's been so much speculation and debate over whether the president's rhetoric is actually contributing to sort of a violence-prone environment. We went and looked for criminal cases around the country, and I want to point out why this matters. We only looked at cases where there were charges filed. That shows how serious the incident was. We also only looked at cases where Trump specifically was invoked. So again, this isn't speculation. This is someone actually invoking the president. And we only looked at cases where there were records or police records or court records invoking the president. So again, not speculation. And we found 36 cases, 9 cases in which the president was invoked in an actual act, a violent act, 10 cases in which he was invoked in a threat, and then another 9 cases in which he was invoked afterward trying to explain the defendant's actions.
I'm going to put you on the spot and be devil's advocate a little bit, Mike, because the White House consistently says that the president disavows violence, the president's words don't suggest violence. The people who twist his words, those 36 cases, are simply sick people. I mean, do authorities see the president as bearing any blame for these incidents?
Well, again, I just go to the court records, right? I go to the court records, I go to the police records, and that's why I looked for those cases where it was specifically inside of a courtroom, before a judge, right? It's not the same as saying that publicly. You're saying that under oath before a judge, or you're saying it to a police officer, and there is a sanction for lying to a police officer, and that's why I looked for those records.
And another thing you found, Mike, was also that this was not the case for President Obama or President
Correct.
George W. Bush, that their names were not invoked the same way that Trump has been time and time again.
Not only not the same way, I didn't find a single case under Obama or Bush like this.
It's really unprecedented to see this volume of cases linked to the President of the United States and his rhetoric.
And already, again, we have another case today, so it could grow.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Much more reporting at abcnews.com. Alex Mallon, Mike Levine, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Turning now to a major decision by Planned Parenthood coming down late yesterday with potential impact on the health care of tens of thousands of women in this country. The network of clinics announced that it was going to withdraw from a federal program that's been in existence in this country for 50 years, known as Title X, which provides federal funding for family planning services. The organization said that a new rule imposed by the Trump administration basically means they cannot participate anymore and will forego that funding. The organization says it has potential impact on millions of women, and our Ann Flaherty is here. She covers these issues and has been tracking this story. Tell us what the new rule says, Ann, and why people should care about Title X.
Right. Well, this is not exactly simple, but this is a program that has been around since 1970. That's almost 50 years. And what it is, it's about a $286 million a year program that the federal government uses taxpayer dollars to fund birth control and other family planning services. It's also cancer screenings and STD screenings. And this is really important in parts of the country where women don't have a doctor and might need to rely on facilities that cater to low-income women like Planned Parenthood.
So the government provides these grants to many of them are Planned Parenthood clinics, but there are other clinics involved as well. And the rules now have changed. The Trump administration says if you're going to receive these funds, you can't refer people to get an abortion.
For an abortion, exactly. What you can't say, you can answer their questions as long as it's considered what they call non-directive. So you're not encouraging a woman to make a choice either way. But if she asks, where do I go next? You can't actually answer that. That's why critics are calling this a gag rule. The other thing they say is you have to have a clear physical separation between the part of your clinic that provides family planning and the part that provides abortion. Planned Parenthood has told me they're not sure exactly what that means. Can they share staff? Can they share admin support, things like that? They weren't sure how to comply with this law, and they felt that it was impeding on their ability to provide these services to low-income women. So Monday, they were supposed to submit a compliance plan, and they said, nope, we're out. We're done. We're dropping the program.
So Planned Parenthood making the decision of its own accord that they are not going to change their practices and their policies to be in compliance with this rule. They're going to forego that funding. So what's the impact on Planned Parenthood and on the millions of women that rely on Planned Parenthood? For more, let's bring in now our guest, Melanie Roussel-Newman. She's a Senior Vice President of Communications at Planned Parenthood here in Washington. Melanie, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. So why make this decision, and what impact is it going to have?
Thank you so much for having me. The truth is that we were forced out. Planned Parenthood was forced out of the Title X program because there's no way to comply without putting our health providers in a situation where they are violating their medical ethics. We believe this gag rule is unethical. We believe this gag rule is illegal, and we were forced out of the program because we're not going to put our providers in a position where they're going to violate their ethics and not provide the best possible care to our patients.
So what's on the line for Planned Parenthood? There's been a lot of talk about the amount of money here. Give us a sense of the actual impact. Will you have to close clinics? Will clinics not be able to hire a certain number of staff? What's the ground level impact?
Well, the actual impact is on Planned Parenthood patients, and we honestly don't have a good sense of how this is going to play out nationally. The impact will vary state to state. In some states, like Utah, Planned Parenthood is the only Title X provider, or Minnesota, where Planned Parenthood is the only provides 90% of the Title X care in the state. We expect there will be longer wait times for appointments, and we expect our patients, in many cases, will simply delay care. Title X is a primary provider for rural areas, for low-income patients, and for patients of color. This is really going to have the most dramatic impact for those patients who need the care the most. And it's not, this is a program that provides birth control coverage, STI screening, breast cancer screenings. This is primary reproductive health care, and the biggest impact is going to be on those patients who really need it the most.
Yeah, and of course, federal law has prohibited for some time federal funding of abortions directly. This money wasn't going to that by any stretch. And you know, the flip side of this coin, Ann Flaherty, is that the Trump administration says that by changing this rule, they're opening up this program, this pot of federal funds, to a number of health centers that have for years been denied a slice of the pie, faith-based organizations.
That's right. So there are church-run pregnancy crisis centers that, under the Obama rules, felt that they would be violating their conscience by being forced to give a woman a referral for an abortion. So I think what this is going to do is probably open up funding opportunities, federal taxpayer dollars, to be going to these organizations that will not necessarily be talking about birth control. They will be talking about natural family planning and urging women away from the more traditional services that Planned Parenthood has offered. So a lot of this could create confusion among consumers, but ultimately the Trump administration says that this is headed in the correct direction.
And Melanie, the Planned Parenthood organization is suing in federal court, we should say, over this rule change, and you do hope that it'll get reversed. Give us a sense of the crux of your legal argument, if you can. What will you tell a federal court as to why this should be rolled back?
Well, if I can also speak to your last point about who is getting the Title X funding, the Title X program still requires that health centers provide contraceptive care, and centers like the Obria Company don't provide contraceptive care and are in violation of the Title X program, and HHS has said that's okay. So I just want to point out that they've made this exception for these centers who are providing confusing information, misleading information to patients, and not providing the full spectrum of reproductive health care that Planned Parenthood and other family planning centers can provide. And our argument in court is simple. We believe this rule is unethical and illegal. Medical providers should be able to provide the full spectrum of health care to their patients. We don't want to have President Trump or Mike Pence standing in between a patient and her doctor. No one wants Mike Pence and President Trump in the exam room with them. And that's what this rule does ultimately. It puts government right smack in the middle of the patient provider relationship. And so that's why we're suing. And we're also encouraging Congress to act. It's really important that Congress restore the Title X program to what it was so that it can serve the 4 million patients across this country who have come to depend on it.
They certainly could legislate the original rule until it was reversed, that's for sure, and something that House Democrats have talked about doing. Before we let you go, Melanie, just want to help you break it down for women out there who want to know how this change, at least today, might impact their ability to access an abortion. Does it have an immediate impact right now, or is there anything you want to tell women who may be looking to seek services at Planned Parenthood? What do they need to know?
I would tell women who are looking to seek services that Planned Parenthood's doors are open. We will continue to provide the best access to health care that we have always provided. In some places that care may be impacted by the Title X rule, but our doors are open, and we're going to continue to provide care, refer for care where needed, and we are here to stay.
All right, Melanie Roussel-Newman with Planned Parenthood here in Washington. Thanks so much, Melanie. Great to see you. Thanks for coming in. And our thanks to you, Ann Flaherty. Much more on this story on abcnews.com as we continue to follow the abortion battle in this country and the fight over Planned Parenthood. Turning now to a battle that's playing out on social media right now in the world of Facebook and Twitter, taking on China in its battle with those protesters in Hong Kong. Both social media giants now launching an aggressive campaign to shut down fake accounts and state-run media accounts that are pushing propaganda around those protests. Let's bring in Michael Kahn, who's a reporter with PC Mag that's been covering this story. Michael, great to see you. This strikes me as a pretty significant move by both companies in light of their past support for free speech.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of critics are saying this is effectively propaganda and misinformation being spread by the Chinese government through these state-run media outlets along with these fake accounts. So these are similar problems that occurred in the 2016 election with the accusations that Russia was doing the same to affect the election. So these are very similar tactics, except this was trying to affect the public's perception of the protests in Hong Kong.
Yeah, and in part by advertising, by some bots on Twitter as well. So we had, as you alluded to it, Michael, we had Russia, now we had China. I mean, you cover the industry pretty closely. How much concern is there that other bad actors could be capitalizing on these platforms and we don't even know it right now?
Yeah, this is probably going to be a persistent problem for years. I mean, this happened in 2016, and now it's happening again, but with China. So it's a playbook any government can use, and it's not hard to create these fake accounts. But in Twitter's defense, they've finally decided to ban state-run. To ban these ads from state-run media companies, and there's an argument that they should have been doing this for a while, because it's very easy to spread propaganda, and these ads will appear no matter if you follow these accounts or not. So these ads were giving these state-run media agencies a huge platform, and they obviously have a lot of funds to spend on these ads.
Yeah, they sure do, and some of the examples that have been in your story at PC Mag and in other reports, just showcasing what this propaganda looks like and how these state-run organizations are using it to spread false narratives is really something to look at. We all need to look at it up close. And I guess the last question I have for you, Michael, is in your dealings with Twitter and Facebook, how do they actually track this stuff down? How do they vet it? Have they been having to staff up armies of investigators to go through their sites and their platforms? Do they have algorithms? How are they sussing these things out?
Yeah, in Facebook's case, they've been, investing a lot of money in hiring people and hiring the best people to try to find these misinformation campaigns over their sites. And Twitter has done similar things, but in Facebook's case, they only learned about this through a tip from Twitter. So, it just kind of shows the scale of the problem and how Facebook is so big, but they can't. It's still difficult for them to police their own platform. And in Twitter, this is what sort of a similar situation. These state-run agencies were buying these ads for weeks and months on a lot of different subjects, and they didn't really know about it, or they didn't really check into it. And it's not clear what exactly tipped off Twitter. It may have been just the Hong Kong protests were getting more visibility, and that prompted them.
Do you know
to take action.
Do you know if the companies have a see something, say something mentality? Is there something all of us can do if we see a fake account or something that doesn't look quite right?
Yeah, I think that's the problem with Twitter, is that a lot of people will complain about certain activities on Twitter as them spreading like propaganda or even hate speech, and a lot of times Twitter may not do anything, or they say it's that the content may be inflammatory, but it's not necessarily against the rules. So you can report these things to the Twitter. They have these flagging options that you can use to report, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll take action.
Which is why today's announcement was seen by many people as quite significant, cracking down on the Chinese, both state-run media and these fake accounts on Twitter and on Facebook. Michael Kahn, reporter with PC Magazine, thanks so much for your reporting, Michael. And great to have all of you with us on this Tuesday here in the briefing room. Hope you join us back here tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Time, or also on the ABC News app 24/7. Download us there. You can stream live coverage of news events all over the world all day long, and on abcnews.com, ABC News on Hulu, Roku, Apple TV. We're there. Hope to see you tomorrow. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. See you next time.